Hello everyone, my name is Muhammad Ilyas bin Muhammad Suhaimi, and today I will be presenting Be Strategic about Trade with Israel to Pursue Justice for Palestine. The article Be Strategic about Trade with Israel to Pursue Justice for Palestine is written by Azriel Muhammad Amin, and this article is perhaps an argumentative article because it mostly argues about Israel's integration into the economies of the Muslim world. Moving on to the second rule, which is content. Um, Content on the article discusses about the reality of having diplomatic ties or trade ties with Israel, and how it can form a strategy, or maybe a strategy of tactical trade uh, in order to pursue of justice for the Palestinian people. And the article is mostly directed mainly at the government officials. It is because you can find this in the country's economic relations. Okay, let's move on to the next rule, which is source. Azriel Muhammad Amin is a Malaysian writer. He is also a lawyer and a chief executive of the Center for Human Rights Research and Advocacy, which is CENTRA. He is also the head of a delegation of Muslim NGOs. His skills and expertise are very important because he is skilled in the areas of human rights and democracy. I believe he is a credible author because articles like that mostly need knowledge on human rights and democracy. This makes him very very compatible to write the article due to his expertise in writing human rights articles. The next rule is audience. As stated before, the article is mostly intended for a specialist audience, specifically for the government officials. This is because the article itself talks about how and why you make trades with Israel, and why having trades with Israel can bring justice for the Palestinian people. In order to understand the article, you must have knowledge on politics, and to those who specialize in that area is very good because you can understand the article very easily. Next rule is rhetorical function. Rhetorical function in the article of the Muslim world. The author in himself give out some opinions about some of the nation that normalizes diplomatic ties with Israel have been branded as traitors to the Palestinian people. Not to mention, other no-Muslim majority countries already had good economic relations with Israel long before they started making ties between them. Let us move on to rule number 6, shall we? Which is purpose. Purpose of the article is to encourage readers that having trade ties with Israel, we can make a move or maybe plan a strategy on doing trades with them in order to get freedom for Palestinians. The last rule, which is the rule number 7, perspective. The writer's stance on the article is he believes that every country that make diplomatic relations with Israel is considered a traitor. It is because people would think that having diplomatic ties with Israel will cause the second Nakba to happen. If you all might not know what this Nakba is, mostly about the incident that happened about 50 years ago, which the mass killing of the Israel army that done to the Palestinian people. And it might cause the second Nakba to happen, as no one will know when it is coming, because economic relations have developed so much that political standardization turns out to be possibly unavoidable without the population in the country, without even realizing it. And this is very important to know, because this can be seen in the article. Now, every country that normalizes diplomatic relations with Israel, either individually or via the Abraham Accords, has been widely condemned as a traitor to the Palestinian cause. But this ignores the fact that these countries had normalized economic and trade ties with Israel well before signing any treaty. I strongly agree with the writer's stance, because there are a lot of postings on social media who are against Israel. This also outspoken messages by popular media outlets that addresses the Arab world as a whole have left nothing to lose in the room for interpretation. For my next reason, the government people would not feel any sympathy towards their people. What I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to explain, the government doesn't feel anything towards the Palestinian people who have been beaten and being killed day by day, because they are not the ones who are down there. You know what I'm trying to say, right? And recent events that happen and the long standstill at resolving the Palestinian issue is giving the momentum to the long-hold demand for reforming the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO. Hamas, which has controlled the Gaza Strip since 2007, is the largest Palestinian faction outside the PLO umbrella. Palestinians have a bigger problem than the issue of the UAE declaring the normalization of the relations with Israel. George Asad, 2020. The situation that has not been able to solve up until now makes Palestinians worried even more. Lastly, every citizen in Palestine will much more also lose hope at this point, because the relations between Israel are becoming more and more dangerous. And Giran 2020 stated that Palestinian leaders have branded Arab states as traitors for making individual agreements, although the United Arab Emirates had conditioned its deal on Israel's shelving potential plans to annex parts of the West Bank that Palestinians claim for a future state. In short, this kind of crime acts may lead to the downfall of Palestine, and it might cause the second Nakba to rise back again without people knowing it. This is my references. You might refer to this if you want more knowledge on this. And that's about it. Thank you very much for listening.